Hello and welcome to the YouTube channel of mprugs.com. My name is Mike Panna. I'm the moderator in the series of videos that is all about Persian rugs and carpets from around the world. And in this video, I'd like to introduce you to a certain type of Persian rug that is really no longer being made. This goes back. The piece right here that I'm going to be featuring is an old Sarough rug. Now, for those of you that are familiar with the Sarough rugs, excuse me, or have seen my other videos, you have, let me grab this here. You may have seen this piece right here. This is what is known as an American Sarough rug. The Saroughs, very similar to the Bidjars. The old ones used to be some of the toughest rugs around. Very similar to the Bidjars. And I'm going to show you them in a minute. But I just wanted to briefly show this rug to you. It was brought into our warehouse. Absolutely stunning. The condition and everything. This carpet is about 80 years old. And for being that it was owned by a family who had kept it in a formal living room for literally decades upon decades, this carpet is like brand new. We had it washed and everything, and it's absolutely stunning. It is also of the type of workmanship that you don't find in the new Sarough rugs. So without further ado, I'm going to get behind the camera as I always do, and I'm going to show you a little bit about the difference between the Sarough rugs that were made for the American and European markets about 100 years ago, and then I'm going to show you what the domestic Sarough rugs are all about. The quality is called Sarough Mahal. This was made for the Persian market, for the domestic Iranian market, and then decades ago it was exported to Europe, purchased by a European family who had it for decades. So without further ado, I'm going to get behind the camera as I always do. I'm going to show you some close-ups, and then you understand why we in the rug business have such respect for this type of quality of a Persian rug. So I'm going to see you again here in just a second. So here I am again, as always, from behind the camera, and just wanted to briefly show you something that will hopefully, for those of you that are passionate about Persian rugs, this is the type of quality that you really don't find in the new carpets. This is an old Sarough. As I said, it dates about 70, 80 years ago. And the Sarough rugs are best known in Europe and the United States. Here's an example. This is, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, this is an example of an old Sarough rug that was made specifically for the European market and that of the United States. This is why they call this type of a Sarough rug an American Sarough. It was actually made for the European and US market. But for the domestic Iranian market, decades ago, this piece right here, this would be a perfect example of what a very solid Persian rug like a Sarough would be all about. This falls in line with the Bidjar rugs. I mean, the thickness, the density, it's absolutely amazing. And as you can see here, this is an old rug. Now, I'm going to show you something that normally I pull things out of the way. But to give you an example of what we mean when we say the Bidjars and the Saroughs are some of the toughest rugs around, I want you to take a look at a larger piece that is on the ground. There is nothing spectacular about this Saruk right here that's been sitting in our warehouse for 40 years, except for the fact that every single carpet that you see here in our warehouse, these come on top of pallets. And when we bring pallets into the warehouse, we do not bother moving this rug. This rug has had thousands and thousands of pallets parked on top of it. As you can see, we got the pallet jack. We got a pallet of rugs right here ready to be shipped. And this rug that you see here, this is the epitome of what we mean when we say that these Bidjar and Saruk rugs are like the steel rugs. The Bidjars, because of their density, because of their triple knot. Now the Saruks are kind of like the little brother of the Bidjars. The Saruks are notorious for, now these are double knotted, but the thick pile, the thickness, and this is with the older pieces, the type of quality, it's known as Mahal. It's a very soft wool. It is not as tightly woven as the Bidjars. The good news is, as a result of it, it's also not as expensive. In fact, on this, I'll give you an example. On this old rug, if this was a Bidjar, you can easily be looking at $20,000, $30,000, maybe $40,000, given the size of it. But because it is a Saruk, it is nowhere near as expensive. But this thing is designed to last you not just your lifetime, your children's and your grandchildren's and then on. Like I said, I left the pallet jack with the rugs here on purpose. I wanted you to see what a rug looks like that is literally used and abused. And in fact, we think that the more we drive over it with our pallet jacks, the denser the pile is getting. So I was going to move this all out of the way when I was going to do the video. And then I thought, you know what? This is just a perfect complement. This carpet was used in a home for decades. Yes, it was a formal room, but after a thorough cleaning, as you can see, the design is absolutely beautiful. You can see in the borders right here, we have some animals, birds, tigers, and we have some scriptures. Now, I don't know how to read and write Farsi. I know how to speak it a little bit, but in each one of these, they have a little bit of a poetic writing. But this is something, the design is unusual on this particular piece, but it's just the sheer quality. And I think it's an absolute stunning piece. So for those of you who are into Persian rugs, you have many times over heard us refer to the Bidjars, the Saruks, as being like the steel rugs. Well, generally that honor goes to the Bidjar rugs. But there is a type of old Persian rug that is really no longer being made, and that is known as the Saruk. And that is what you see here, the Sarough Mahal. That is a very, very dense, beautiful piece. They're typically just made out of wool, but it is made with such a high quality. That is how they used to make them. The newer ones, they just don't, the new ones don't have the oomph. That's the best way to put it. That's the only way I can put it, and I think you know what I'm talking about. The newer Saruk rugs, they just don't have that specialness about them, at least in my opinion. But here you have a great example of what an older piece looks like. And I also wanted to show you how when we say these are indestructible carpets, we mean it. Mr. Palajak over here can attest to the fact that he has not been able to tear this rug even once. And so there you go. I thought I'd introduce you to an old, classic Sarough Mahal, absolute, just an amazing find. And so I hope you enjoyed this video as much as the others. Feel free to subscribe or check us out at mprugs.com if you need more information. And I look forward to bringing you our next video. Take care and best of wishes. Bye-bye.